So we're at the Anil Agarwal Dialogue organized by Center for Science and Environment, and I'm being joined by Sunita Narain. She is the Director General of CSC at this point, and Anumita ma'am, she is the Executive Director of CSC as well. Thank you for speaking to NDTV, ma'am. Ma'am, these 3 days of the conclave has been very jam-packed with information, with a lot of data as well on climate change. First off, question to the both of you: what, in your understanding, are top 3 priorities or challenges that India should focus on for a sustainable future?
Start with Anumita. I think what has really come out very clearly from the conversation that we've had for the last 3 days, that the need for a new future which is defined with transformative changes. That small, incremental, slow pace of progress cannot define the way we need to move forward to take on the new challenges. Now, if that is the case, and when we, as you have heard, a very long discussion around the problem of air pollution, mobility. Now imagine our cities with so many local challenges, and when they have to now really need to reduce the pollution levels by 30 to 70%, that kind of change is possible when you are looking at massive energy transition across all sectors. You're looking at massive mobility transition and then circularity, so that all streams of waste from where you are recovering the material and make it a resource again. We have to prepare for that kind of a future to be able to get there.
Ma'am, I was thinking of asking this a little later on, but because you bring about pollution, despite policies like the GRAP in place, why do cities like Delhi still struggle with air pollution?
Simply because it's not that Delhi has not done anything. Delhi has actually done quite a bit to be able to deal with its industrial pollution, its vehicular pollution. But what we have realized, that every stage of progress, there are still big gaps in action that we have not yet been able to address. And we have not been able to understand that you may gain somewhere, but if you're not paying attention to some other areas we need to pay attention to, then that is going to overwhelm the change. And that is so clear in the vehicular pollution in the city. We did so much to improve the technology, get rid of old vehicles, stop trucks, get rid of diesel, bring CNG. But then after doing all of that with so much emission reduction in the city, we now realize that all that we could do to reduce the emissions per unit of vehicle getting overwhelmed by the sheer mobility crisis, because the number of vehicles, more travel in the city, that is swamping that change. So that means where we have failed terribly is to meet the mobility requirement of the population in the city. And if that travel demand cannot be met sustainably with integrated public transport, walking, cycling, we will not be able to win the game. So that means now we have to focus on the new agenda, understand where are the current gaps in either mobility, in industrial pollution, in waste management, and define the steps very clearly, especially now when the new government has to take on the new challenge. Just last line, that imagine from where we are today, Delhi requires another 60% reduction in particulate pollution to get cleaner, and that's not a small challenge.
Yeah. Sunita ma'am, to you, it's a little broad question, but how do you assess India's current efforts to combat climate change?
So, for us, firstly, climate change is not the top priority. Let's be very clear about it. And I don't think it ever should be. For us, climate change is an added benefit. To reduce climate change emissions is an added benefit. For us, the top priority has to be exactly what Anumita was just talking about. Say, for instance, local air pollution. Now, local air pollution is toxic. It is bad for our health. If we reduce the emissions by changing, as Anumita is suggesting, a mobility transformation, we will also reduce CO2 emissions. So I think when you're talking about climate change action, you must always frame it, for us, the framing has to be within the co-benefit agenda. What works for us, what is good for us, and therefore we need to do it, and that will also help the climate. Now, that said, I think overall my assessment is that I think India's intentions and programs are absolutely spot on. And let's be clear, the government of India has some of the best programs that across the world. I mean, we are the ones investing in electric buses, which no country in the world is doing at the scale we are doing. We are the country which is investing in making sure that those buses actually get paid for by a guarantee. We also have a massive program for renewable energy. We also have a program to make sure that we can clean up our cities. So, and remember, garbage in our cities directly contributes both to the health challenge, but also to the climate change and to air pollution. Because the more garbage you burn, you add up with emissions. So, I think when we look at it, I think the question we have to ask, exactly as Anumita is asking, is not what more do we need to do? And the question here is not more policies, more program. The question is to act at scale and to act so that the action is transformative. And that, I think, is where we need to from now focus on.
Last question to the both of you, ma'am. You also just, this is a point that I was going to bring about policies. We do have a lot of policies in place, and implementation is also something that has been vastly discussed at the conclave. Now, my question is that how do we get people to actually switch to electric? How do we get people to install solar systems at their rooftop? How do we bring about this consciousness because I feel it starts with us, right?
Good question. So for me, I think the question is really, people do this in two ways, okay, and both work together. One is you need a government regulatory incentive system that gets people to move to better technology. If you look at Norway, the country which is talked about all over the world in terms of electric mobility, they provide massive subsidy to buy an electric car. Now, we can't do that because we don't have those kind of resources. But we need to think about what kind of an incentive regulatory system can we have. Now, for electric cars to come in, you also have to tighten the norms for other cars so that you disincentivize other cars, okay? Now, those norms haven't come through yet, what they call, I think, CAFE norms. So those norms haven't come through yet. Now, as a result of it, that is one part of the puzzle. People don't do things that are good just for the sake of the goodness of their heart. They do it because there is a government policy which nudges them towards it. The other is that they will do it as they also find that there is a benefit for them. And that's where the multiplier impact comes in. Because on one hand, if you have the right regulatory environment, on the other hand, if I know that this solar energy is reducing my solar bill, I'll tell you, and then you will do it as well. And then, so that's what is the multiplier impact. And I think both those things have to work together. And we are not seeing that happen enough because many of those issues are not playing out. I mean, people are still buying an electric car, but there is still a lot more concern about, will I be able to sell it in the second-hand market? Will I be able to have a charging station for it? You know, so there are a lot of doubts, and those are the issues that both policy has to clear, but also we need people to spread the word of the goodness of it.
Right. Ma'am?
Absolutely, and I think fully agree, and I think Sunita has said it so well. Only thing, therefore, I'll just add here is that today, we are beginning to talk about awareness about the problems, but it's more important now to deepen the awareness regarding the solutions. And for that, people have to understand, and for that, of course, they need enablers that Sunita just talked about, more information so that they can take right decisions, make right choices. But at the same time, we also want that environmentalism should not just become a middle-class environmentalism and hurt the interests of others. Understand that going forward, the solutions are also going to get more difficult and, as Sunita always says, inconvenient. If that happens, then we have to build public support for it. That's the only way to change the politics around the issue and get the solutions on ground.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much to the both of you. So that was Sunita Narain and Anumita Roychowdhury speaking to us, and somewhat, collating here that it's about transformative changes, and A is not linked to just B, A is linked to pretty much everything at this point. Thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you. Thank you.